Boundaries. This word is thrown around a lot. And I think as a business owner with a service oriented business, I'm a service provider at the end of the day, right? I do coaching, I teach branding, occasionally I'll do special branding projects or marketing strategy projects. Boundaries are so important, especially as we scale as business owners. Boundaries are healthy boundaries are the difference between feeling like you are leading the company and you have enough space and time to do that effectively and enjoy your life, and being a scattered, burnt out founder that is making quick decisions that end up not actually pushing the business forward and feeling like they're just not really doing anything correctly. Yes, I am so serious when I say healthy boundaries are truly the main difference between those two. Welcome to Confessions of a Spiritual Entrepreneur. I'm Samantha Fackler, your host, business mentor, brand strategist, and someone who believes that building a business is one of the most spiritual journeys you can take. I am here to help you grow your business through proven strategies and aligned practices, so ultimately you can make more money while being in a state of ease. Now, why me? I have worked with over 100 companies and almost 14 years in the brand and marketing space. I've worked with brands that you, your mom, and your grandma know, but I am also spiritual. I love astrology, I keep crystals in my desk, and I'm a Reiki master. So I bring an extra little flavor to this conversation. Let's get into it. Now, there are so many different kinds of boundaries. So we're going to be talking about a few today. I'm going to be sharing some tips on what I do in my business for healthy boundaries, communication, energetic boundaries, even psychic boundaries. And yeah, I really hope that you leave today feeling inspired. Like, even if you are that heart-centered entrepreneur who wants to help the world and help so many people, that you actually have some tools in order to set and maintain healthy boundaries so that you also have enough room for yourself. Okay. With that, the story that comes to mind when I think about boundaries is one with my mother. Of course, right? Like mom boundaries. I think it's such a natural one because mother-daughter relationships, even mother-son relationships, if you think about it, you were in their body at one point, and then you were born and you have the boundary of two different bodies. And then you grow up into your own person and your roles between each other change. And so there is this unspoken or sometimes spoken agreement of those boundaries over time. And for me, I went on a Vipassana meditation retreat, which is a silent 10-day meditation retreat in early 2020, right before COVID hit. And when I went, I told my mom, like, hey, there are no electronics. I'm not even speaking for 10 days. I'm just purely going to be in silent meditation for like 100 hours. Actually, 100 hours. I can count them. Here is the schedule. I will not have my phone. I will call you after. Now, of course, she's probably like, oh my gosh, my daughter, she's traveling. She's in a different country. She's at some weird meditation retreat. My mom does not meditate. And lo and behold, when I left the retreat, of course, when I powered up my phone for the first time in 10 days, I saw missed calls. I saw text messages being like, hey, I'd love to hear from you. Please call me back. Now, what was happening here? I obviously set an initial boundary saying, hey, I will not be on my phone. You can expect not to hear from me, and you can expect to hear from me when I leave this thing. Even knowing that, she still blew up my phone. So, it's out of love, right? It's one of these, I bring up this example because it's kind of a cute, fun one, but that's how boundaries feel sometimes. They can feel cute and fun, and we don't realize what's happening underneath the hood. And when those boundaries get pushed over and over and over, it can lead to all sorts of negative things, hurting the relationship, resentment. Oh gosh, the list goes on and on and on. And obviously the level of boundary that's being violated can range drastically from subtle things like communication to more significant things. Now, one of the biggest problems, and something I have had to learn with my mom, is how do you negotiate those boundaries? How do you maintain them, which is probably the hardest part. Because as people, and especially with people we love or clients that we're working with that we care a lot about, we want to serve them. We want to help them. We value them. And it's really easy to be like, oh, well, okay, just this time I'll respond. It could have been easy for me to be like, you know what, I'm going to break my no phone rule and go check my phone to catch up with my madre, right? But I didn't. And that was because I was maintaining those boundaries for myself, even if she violated them on her side. So it's this interesting dance that we're, fluttering around is how do you balance being nurturing, but also being decisive? And how do you set boundaries around things where there sometimes is already some flexibility? So there are a few different reasons why this is hard. One is the caretaker leader paradox. And this is rampant for service providers because we are delivering a service. We are showing up. We are doing something of value. And boundaries can be crossed when we're trying to do a good job. It would be really easy for me to meet with clients and just go over and talk over for 10, 20, 30 minutes. And I've had some clients that I feel like if I didn't have boundaries, that would happen. But I cannot do that because I also have to have compassion for myself and know my limits and know that our session ends at that hour. And I also know my flexibility limits, right? So if there is some sort of conversation that can't be tied up to the second, I'm not just going to be like, okay, leave meeting. I'm also a human. So how do I figure out that boundary and then the margin within it, right? So I might give someone a minute or 2 minutes over if we're wrapping up something, but ultimately I need to respect my own time. And by doing that, I also respect their time. So that's an example of one. The second thing is this kind of always on culture. And this one is really interesting because when we have a business, we also have marketing, meaning that we're showing up with an email newsletter or we're showing up on social media. And a lot of times we are sharing our personal life in those contexts. And that is because, again, we want to show up as a whole human. We don't want to show up as a one-dimension robot. When we show up with more of who we are, people genuinely get to know us and trust is built. And it does make more fruitful relationships because we get to have more real conversations. But I think what happens with this, as well as the timing, right? Because you might post on social at 7 p.m., but you're not working at 7 p.m., is that with this always on culture, and I dare to say like everywhere culture, all these different platforms we're showing up on, there can be this expectation that clients should also hear from us at any time. Or the other blurred line that happens here is there's a blur between personal and professional when you are the business. So let's parse that out a bit. First is kind of the when. So let's say you're posting social media 7 p.m., but you tell people like, I don't respond to Slack messages after 5. That is okay. If a client is then DMing you on Insta or sending emails after your work hours, you can maintain that boundary and get back to them the next business day. And I hold that one firm. Okay. I tell my clients, and I'll actually tell you how I structure this. So I put it in my contracts when I'm available on Slack with my private clients, or if I'm doing special projects, I will let them know. And I set expectations up front because that is the strongest and best way to have boundaries, is to set them immediately. And this is not overly rigid. This is not overly professional. This is like a layer 0. This is a table stakes type thing, right? Yes, it is professional, but it is also vital to you, your business, and the relationship. So set it up front. Step 2, when I have my first meeting with someone, I can't guarantee that they've read the contract. So I always set the ground rules when I start working with someone new. And I say, hey, yada, yada, these things. Oh, and by the way, with Slack, you can message me anytime, Monday through Friday, between these hours, and you can expect to hear from me within this amount at the very latest, but you will typically hear from me same day or next day. So they know what is typical, but then what is that ultimate, drop dead moment, if you will. And again, that margin communicates, hey, this is what to expect. So I am not expected to, respond same day every time. And that's important because sometimes I do have travel or busy seasons where I can't get back to someone the exact same day, but they know they'll probably hear from me the next day. So this type of thing is really, really important. And then the third big part of this is, well, what happens if your boundary gets crossed? And so we'll get to that in just a second. I want to go back to where. So I am obviously on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I have a YouTube, I have a community, a podcast, and I have clients. And my clients often listen to my podcast. Hi, I love you. You're amazing. But sometimes they'll also DM me on some of these other things. I view that as separate because it is very clear in our, contract and professional relationship that we mainly communicate on Slack for things. So if they were to start messaging me on a different platform about some coaching topic, then I would say, hey, let's actually take this, put it back into the professional zone. It would be going against my boundaries to then start coaching them on these other platforms. And that is for a very good reason. Because if I were to still be coaching them on these other platforms, then if and when that relationship closes, those areas would still be open. And they might think that they can still be asking me coaching questions on those platforms if I, have not agreed to that. And then that would be going against my boundaries as a coach. So just these are some examples of what can happen with where you're showing up and then at what times and how to combat this always on thing that is now rampant in our lives. So I want to talk about communication with your clients for a little bit. And I think we've talked about timing, we've talked about platforms, but I think another piece of this is project scope and the lovely phrase scope creep. Scope creep means, hey, we're going to work on this together. But then the client starts asking for more things. Or, hey, actually, can I get this even faster? Or can I get this yada, 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 right? So that is why it's so important to be super, 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 super clear in your contracts and why it is advantageous to have a contract lawyer look over your agreements before you sign them. Because I have been a part of marketing strategy projects, for instance, where I outline the deliverables and expectations and all that stuff. So you've agreed on a project and then they start asking for more things, or they start asking for things at a different cadence, like they want you to produce faster than you originally agreed on. So this is where it needs to be addressed, right? Because if you keep saying yes, 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 all of a sudden you're doing more work outside of what you agreed upon, which means that you are probably losing money. So one kind of script to use in this case would be like, I love you that you're thinking bigger. I love that you want to move at this pace, but it feels like this would be better for phase 2, right? And what you see with that little script is that there is an acknowledgement. You're not being rude. You're not like, hey, this is out of bounds. Nah, brah. You're just saying, hey, I see you and that is possible, but these are the boundaries, right? In these other bounds. The second big example is like the emergency that isn't. So someone marks like everything urgent and it's not urgent. No one is dying. So it's, responding with respect and understanding that there's probably some, stress or dysregulation that is charging them forth. And so being gentle about that, right? Because you do want to nurture the relationship, but you also want to be strong and firm about when you're working and when you're not. And you don't want to be dismissive, right? So again, it's really helping someone feel seen and heard in their request, but also addressing your boundaries and what you can do. And sometimes, depending on the context of your business, it might also require a little bit of communication about what is an emergency and what is not. So, with my private clients who are VIPs, they have unlimited emergency calls. But it's very important to me to have that conversation with them of, hey, this is an emergency and this is not, so that I'm not getting calls every single day of them just like wanting to shoot the shit. So, communication, you guys, is the key to boundaries if you haven't been picking that up yet. And the third is kind of the overshare client. Now, again, this depends on the context. I'm a coach and personal life stuff comes up, whether we're talking about business, growing their business, scaling their team. Inner work is a big part of what I do. So the boundaries for me as a coach are knowing when are we venturing into like deep therapy territory and I am out of my scope, and what is within the coaching realm. And that is a very fine line. And that is very hard for a lot of people to decipher. But I am certified through UC Berkeley as an executive coach. So I understand what those lines are. And I communicate, hey, we are starting to encroach on this territory just to let you know. And I will let them know how far I can go with them versus where they might want to talk to someone else. You know, if you are, I keep thinking of like a bookkeeper example, but let's say you're a bookkeeper, but someone gets on their call and they just want to talk about their day. You know, at a certain point, it's like you're there to do a service and you need to get them back on track. So again, communication, see how you can gently but firmly bring back the topic of focus and not go off talking about, you know, whatever might be on their plate. Now, for personal relationships, because I do want to talk about this part too, I find that boundaries with our personal relationships do affect us as women entrepreneurs, or men if you're listening. Hello. I think, like with my mom, for example, when I communicated, I was like, I totally understand that you were worried. I appreciate that you care, but like this retreat was super important for me. And I need to know in the future that like when I share these things, like if I were to go on a retreat or if I were to go on a camping trip or something and not have my phone, that, you know, you'll understand. And is there anything that you need to know from me in the future to, you know, help make that happen? So it is all about how you communicate, but staying firm. And the thing that I want to kind of emphasize here for personal stuff is in order to set and maintain these things, you need to have compassion for yourself. And you need to be tapped into when you feel like something is going past a boundary, because that is typically when we're getting into like a yellow zone, right? Green zone is we're all cool, we're all safe, hunky dory. Yellow zone is, ooh, we're getting close to the edge. I'm feeling like this is going overboard or over time or whatever it is. Then there's the red zone. The red zone you do not want to be in, because that's when we get angry, we get sad, we are distressed, and we can feel that in our bodies. And we want to avoid that. So we want to understand when we're in yellow zone and use that time to hit the brakes, to set the boundary. For client relationships, I know we've talked about a lot of things, but document everything, right? Make sure your contracts are clear. Make sure you address those things. If you're noticing patterns, like there is a boundary crossing pattern, then it's time to address that. It's not just a once isolated incident. And then offer solutions, not just restrictions. Okay, that's a big, 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 big one. The last thing I'll share here is kind of an energetic boundary piece. So this is for those who do believe in, like, you know, I have energy and you have energy. And as a coach, sometimes because I'm in someone's energy for an hour, you know, during a session, sometimes I can leave that still thinking about them or trying to solve their problems in my head, or actually like feeling their energy on my person, on my body. And I know this is a bit more of a sensitive topic, but it's true. And so for me, what I do is I do a clearing practice before and after every coaching session. I take deep breaths. I feel my feet on the floor. Sometimes I'll tap the top of my head and just almost imagine like I'm taking this like energetic shower. And then I do the exact same thing after. And this is a tip that I learned from teaching yoga and Reiki energy healing. But sometimes after I have kind of done a little clearing and feel more like myself, I will say my name 3 times. So I know it sounds weird, but I'll be like, Samantha, Samantha, Samantha. And that brings me back into myself and even those kind of psychic boundaries back onto me instead of trying to problem solve in my head for the person I just met with. So that's probably my favorite tip from today because I know it's a little bit out of the norm, but it's one that I've seen a lot of progress with myself. And I've just, yeah, I think, all the different boundary things we talked about today are so important for all service-oriented businesses, as well as product businesses, right? If you are running a business in general, you have a team, you have partners, you probably have advisors. Boundaries are important across all of these, as well as our personal lives. So my challenge for you today is to actually identify one boundary that you feel like is getting crossed regularly. And then see if you can practice the kind of gentle reset language with this person and consider, like, what would you change if you protected your energy as fiercely as you protect your clients or you protect the relationship? Okay. With that, thank you for being here. Remember, boundaries aren't walls. They're here to protect you. That allows you to show up as your best self. And my name is Samantha Fackler, your host. You can find me on Instagram at samantha.fackler. We have our YouTube if you prefer to watch this episode or past episodes. And if you enjoyed today, please leave a rating or review. They go such a long way. I get so excited about them. I share them with my friends and group chat. So thanks for being here. We'll catch you next time.